You usually get it right, isn't that right? Sometimes, oh, you're speechless. I see how this will be a long 30 minutes.
It's going to be long.
So Lydia, thank you for having us. I told Lydia if we're going to come speak, we're not going to get up and give speeches because it's the middle of the day, y'all are eating chocolate chip cookies, everybody's going to fall asleep. It's cold outside. So I figured Jess and I, we could have a conversation, just do a little bantering, talk about questions maybe y'all have. I think everybody in this room should know by now, there's no questions off limits with me. I'll talk about anything you want to talk about. But we've got a big next 2 to 3 weeks ahead of us to finish the drill here in Paulding County to make sure our folks win. I believe everyone here is a patriot. I know everyone is busting their you-know-what. We went around every table here. I know somebody is doing something actively in their neighborhood or knocking on doors or has made phone calls or has signed up to be a poll worker or something. Or you're working for the governor or Herschel or whatever the case may be. So on behalf of us, I mean, we appreciate everything that you're doing. I didn't have a general election opponent. I know Joseph, I believe, does, and there's some others. I'm not worried about these folks. These folks are going to win big time. But to put that in perspective, in my opinion, why it's so important that Herschel and the governor and everybody win is to set the tone for the next 5 to 10 years in this county to make sure this county stays red. And in districts like Joseph Gullet's, who, you know, did change a little bit. He's got a little bit more South Paulding. And, you know, the voting trends are changing a little bit all across Metro Atlanta, that, you know, we're getting our message across about what we stand for and why we're standing for what we're standing for. We're passing good bills, but at the same time, we're defending what's coming down the road. So, you know, our first, you know, stop at defense, and I know, you know, Virginia, you've already run, what, in 3 races, it feels like already? But this post-commissioner race in South Paulding is important because it also sets the tone here in Paulding County, makes sure our county commission stays red. We have conservatives, we have Republicans representing us in all 5 seats. And I think as we talk about quality of life and we talk about kids and we talk about what's going on in this county, you do not want the policies of commissioners from Fulton County and what we're battling in Atlanta. Or I can tell stories all day, and I'll probably get into it, about what we've seen from the Gwinnett County Commission and the Gwinnett County School Board of all things, you know, getting into our local stuff. So that commission race to me in Paulding County is the most important race for us as Republicans. If you're not involved, you know, help Virginia, send her $10, like make a call the neighbor, put a sign out. But right now, to me, that's an important race, and it sets the tone for the top of the ticket of what we're doing in this county. So, you know, Joseph, I assume you agree with that. I mean, you represent, I think, some of the folks, you know, Virginia has. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing here coming up, and especially, you know, I know we're here in North Paulding, but you know, to talk about what's going on in Hiram and parts of your district that I think really is where the battleground is happening.
Sure. Yeah, so I do represent East Paulding. I used to represent, or still do until the next election, the north end of Cedar Crest, so the opposite side of the road I have, down 381 and into Hiram. So I have more of Hiram, more of the Studi area in the future race. But Paulding County is changing at the end of the day. I mean, we all recognize it, we all know it, and that's something that is just a true statement. It's a fact. It's changing with new people coming here. I'm not from Paulding County. I wasn't born and raised here, so I'm one of those new people too. I moved here in 2007. I came from Gwinnett County, and all my family still lives in Gwinnett County. And so, but you do see Paulding changing. At that time, in 2007, Paulding was growing fast. I think we're the 6th fastest growing county at that time. So growth is not new to Paulding. It's a great place to live, and people know that, and they want to move here. And so you're not going to stop growth at the end of the day. That's just not a reality. But what you want to do is just make sure you have the infrastructure to handle the growth. That's probably one of the main things that we need to concentrate on, and one of the main things that I think that the other side doesn't concentrate on. So as we grow, they want to grow. They want to grow numbers. They want to grow fast, and almost primarily for electorate reasons. And Republicans, I think we think of, we're conservative. We want to plan more. We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure. We have the right tax base. We're not just growing residents, but we're also growing jobs. That we're also growing industries and commercial growth. So that there's a better, we always talk about live, work, and play, and that's exactly what we want for Paulding County. But if you grow one of those too fast, that throws off the balance there. And then you deal with traffic issues, and you deal with crime issues. You deal with all sorts of things that the infrastructure can't handle, whether it's public safety, which is something that Colonel Hunton has done a lot with. It helps us, and District Attorney Rollins, as we grow and we grow fast, and people come from other places, and we don't have the police force necessarily to handle it, or we don't have the crime prevention tactics, or we're not in the community as much as we were, because now we have the same amount of deputies as we had, and we had 40,000 less people, something like that. That's what we have to plan for. That's what costs money. Those are the things that we have to look for. So Hiram specifically is they don't have their tax basis, I think, is primarily on lost, and so lost is the local option sales tax. They don't charge they don't have like a homeowner's property tax in Hiram. City of Dallas does do that. So, Hiram, for the most part, they get their money off the sales tax revenue that comes in, and they get a small percentage of what they bring in back. And I know there's a big conversation going on at the county level about how that's going to manage, whether from the percentage that the county gets, the percentage that Dallas gets, the percentage that Hiram gets, and it's a every 10-year type thing that they deal with. But if they don't get money from their homeowner, from property taxes, and they get money from the loss, so their big job primarily is really police force in Hiram, because that's where a lot of the revenue from a retail standpoint comes from. And so Hiram's police force is very important. The sheriff's office doesn't avoid Hiram; they're in Hiram as well. But there's a lot of retail establishments, and a lot of times that's where crime can happen in protecting the assets that Hiram has. So, but Democrats, I will say, Governor Kemp is he's leading the polls. I think we all see that, but you can't rest on your laurels. And if you got to play that you're 20 down, and that's something that we need to do. We need to fight for him. At the end of the day, people don't come. The one thing I think for me is people don't come to vote for me at the end of the day. They're not coming. You don't go to vote, and you're only going to I'm on your driving factor to go vote. I don't think Senator Anavitarte is the same, or the commissioners are the same. You're voting the top of the ticket. That's what drives the vote. So Kemp and Herschel and all them, and what you need to do is they need to stay around long enough to vote for you. And that's what my message is always. I know you're not going to, state representative is not like your driving force most times to go vote. But when you go vote for Kemp, or you go vote for Herschel, or when you vote for both of those, make sure you stay around long enough to vote for me. Make sure you stay around long enough to vote for Jason, and for Virginia, and for Sandy, and for Rollins, who's on the ballot this year too. So that is the key, and understanding that is very important for you talking to people too. Hey, we need to go elect this person. That's true, but the top of the ticket, what drives 90% of the voters. Most people aren't engaged enough, and you'll see the drop off as they get tired. They kind of get fatigued as they go, and the lower you are on the ballot, the less votes you typically get. So very important. That's where Democrats sneak in sometimes. That's why they put people in all these races. It might be a races of 70% Republican district. They'll put a Democrat in there, and they do that because fatigue. People forget, and all of a sudden the Democrats are, they vote down the ballot. They might sneak one out. That's not really their race to win. So that's vitally important for Kimberly New too. She's I don't know if she got called out earlier, but she's running for West Douglas and Southeast Paulding County. Kimberly Alexander was a Democrat. She got pushed into Douglas only, thank God. And Kimberly New, she's got a lot of Micah's old district. That's a difficult district. Out of all of us in the room, besides maybe Virginia, and actually I think Virginia's even got better district really than Kimberly New. That's a tough district. Kimberly needs your help, and so make sure that you focus on that and helping the people. That's say she has a 55% district, which is probably what it is. It doesn't take much swing to change that quickly, especially if you're dealing with Douglas County, which is run by a bunch of idiots down there, honestly. So, that's just the root of it. Their policies, and when Democrats get in power, their policies are, they start building high growth developments and apartment complexes and high rises, and it's all about the growth of people, because they're not very business friendly in general anyways. And so that changes, they do different things to change the demographics and to change the voter electorate there, which keeps them in power. And it's difficult to get back. So, I'll leave it there, and I'll let Jason kind of go from it. But let me ask you a question, actually. So, yeah, I like this now. I know. So, as we talk about growth in Paulding, and as we, that's something that we both ran. You ran the school board, and I ran here. We talked about, changing the makeup of tax base in Paulding County. This is more of a commissioner question, but what are some things that you think we can do at the state level in order to help Paulding County as we, as we continue to work on economic development here? I think that's a universal thing that we all want in Paulding County. I think every commissioner and probably every city council member would say that. I think even from the state side, we would say that economic development is important. What do you think at the state level we can do to help our commissioners and our city councils get better, a better tax digest right now?
That's a great question. You calling other counties idiots. You've been hanging around me too long. But real quick, I want to put a finer point on Kimberly. So we talk about patriots in this room. Kimberly lives in Douglas County. It's a Democratic county. Luckily, she has 2 precincts in Paulding County. Is it 2 or 3?
3.
3. Okay, I'm shortchanging you. So you've got 3, and so you have somebody that's here fighting in our county who is literally in the fire every single day in the minority delegation in the other county, like fighting for our values. And if you're not investing in this woman and helping this woman do what she's doing, I'm going to tell you, it's a hard battle. I mean, that's like going and hanging out, I know, with our fellow delegations in Fulton County, or I don't know if we got anybody left in DeKalb County and Bearly and Gwinnett County. That's what she's about to go into. And that cannot be understated, like the fire she's going into. So support her, help her, show up for her. If she says, hey, I need help because Democrats are coming after me, don't leave her hanging. So I just want to give Kimberly a shout out because you're going into a... And don't get me wrong, you signed up to run for office, so, I mean, it's your problem. So I think to answer Joseph's question, when we talk about economic development, and we've had this conversation with the commissioners we're blue in the face and the school board, but I think the opportunity is in front of us. And so I luckily have the opportunity and the honor to serve on the Senate Transportation Committee. And we've spent the last 2 years looking at how we're going to fund infrastructure and what's going on with infrastructure. And there's no secret in this county. We don't have an interstate. None of that's going to change in any of our lifetimes. But the opportunity is that when we look at products and we look at supply chain and we look at logistics and we look at all of those different factors in terms of why is Georgia the #1 place to do business and where is commerce going, we met with the DOT one day, and Janine Miller, who's the transportation planner for the state. And if you look at that map, all of West Georgia, basically west of Cobb County, in terms of where's supply chain routes, where are like the Amazon hubs, and where's all that stuff happening, it ain't happening basically west of Cobb County. So Harrison, Paulding, Polk, Floyd, Carroll, Hurd, Coweta, we're all in this same kind of bucket, even though some of those counties got an interstate like Harrison County. And I will tell you, and this is no secret, and I've told a lot of folks that even though Harrison County is a very small county and it's a highly rural county, and thank God it's 90% Republican on election day, they're starting to get a lot of attention and a lot of job growth and a lot of investment in that 20 corridor between the Alabama state line and Bremen. And we know there's interest, and we've heard it in Carroll County happening. We've started to see, my first year in the Senate, I got to work with the county and the city of Cedartown, and we brought online a 240-acre grad site for development that's next to a rail line. It's got broadband, it's got stormwater in their technology park, and it's because we see the future that if we want to succeed, we're going to have to take risks, we're going to have to get outside the box, and we can't settle for whatever we got. And I think the biggest thing all the commissioners understand is that at some point, got to start putting stuff in the ground and fixing the infrastructure. We can talk about housing, all that in a few minutes, but those basic things, if we want jobs, and I've told the commissioners that if you come out, or even the mayors, you come ask me for money, transportation money, and you don't have a plan and you don't have a strategy, there's no way I'm going to get that money in the budget. There's no way the governor or the DOT board or anyone is going to give us a chance. And we've been a little bit behind the 8 ball, and I think the opportunity is we have to change that, because in the past, and I'm going to be blunt, I'm not talking about our delegation in Paulding, but we have not had a seat at the table having these conversations with the Commissioner of Economic Development and all these other leaders who look around the state when a company calls and says, I want to move there. Like, they never called anybody. I'm just going to be honest. They didn't call anyone in Paulding County. We had the same phenomenon in Haralson County. God bless my predecessor. I love him. But he had told the commissioner, like, don't bring jobs to my county. And so myself and the House rep from Tyler Paul Smith, who's now a House rep for Paulding County too, I mean, we had to go meet with project managers and the commissioner and plead our case as to why we wanted jobs. And from that, we sprung board into going in even into Alabama, meeting with companies and saying, hey, why do you need to come to West Georgia? Why do you need to come to Haralson County? Why do you need to come to Paulding County? And we have to do more of that. I'm going to tell you, we're not going to grow jobs by sitting here in the county lines thinking like the jobs are coming. Because commissioners and legislators and the average citizen and the business community in this county, and those that even invest and maybe don't run businesses, I'm going to tell you, those are the types of people in Houston County and Bartow County and all these other communities that are going and meeting with all of these other companies and investors and saying, hey, bring the jobs here. And if we're not proactive and we're not doing it, and everybody in this room knows, I don't care if you get mad at me, I don't care if you don't like me, I don't care if you don't vote for me in the next election. If we're not doing those kinds of things, we're going to lose, and we're going to continue to lose. And I don't know about you, but I hate losing, and I'm tired of losing. It's one of the reasons why I ran for this job, and I know working with Joseph, and we've talked about, how do we bring logistic corridors to this county. There are places where tractor trailers are running in this part of and we'll talk about North Paulding. I'll use it as an example, where in North Paulding on Highway 61, all the way up through, up to the city limits of Dallas, and I've talked to James Kelly about this, those trucks do not need to be going through Burn Hickory. They don't need to be coming down Cedar Crest Road. Like, Highway 92, it is a logistics corridor. It is what it is. It's not changing. There are other corridors. 278 is a corridor. And when we talk about the balance of jobs and moving product, well, a lot of product stops at that Cobb County line and that Douglas County line. But part of the problem is 278 from Cobb County to basically where you take that right on 92 to go north. That's the only part of 278 that's a part of any sort of logistics corridor on a freight map or transportation map or anything. So what I've asked, because I do serve almost 200,000 people and I have multiple counties, because we have the same issue in Cedartown and we have the same issue in Rockmart, and it gives an opportunity for Hiram, Dallas, Rockmart, and Cedartown to actually work together. And when I got elected, one of the first things we were able to do is break bread between the three chairmen of Haralson, Paulding, and Polk County for the first time probably in about 8 years, is to have a conversation about how do we all help each other. So what we've asked is that the DOT, and we'll see what happens if the data shows it, is to extend that corridor from the Cobb County line all the way to the Alabama state line so that we can actually talk about how do we move commerce. And then that commerce that's being created and shuffled around in Douglas County and parts of Carroll County and that 20 corridor in Haralson County, how do we get those jobs north up Highway 27 and up Highway 101? And 101's it's a critical corridor between Carroll County and up towards Floyd County. How do we leverage that to bring these jobs up here to the north without disturbing our balance of quality of life and all the cool things I know I want to see here in our neighborhood? Carol, I know you want to too, and all of us, to change this whole dynamic, but also too, not disrupt everything else in terms of being overcrowded and feeling like we're, I grew up in Dorable, no secret. Me and him found out we grew up probably down the street from each other. And that dynamic doesn't need to happen here, and there's a way to do it where we've seen other counties do it. But at the end of the day, and I applaud the commissioners with how they've handled their comprehensive land use plan, the transportation plan, and being transparent, having public meetings. They heard me, complain and raise what on certain things, and they fixed it. They've heard from the House delegation. So we're all talking and having these tough conversations. But we know at the end of the day, after we get done complaining and yelling, we got to get the job done. And I think we have to think about, in terms of the future, who are we competing against? I think we're competing against Alabama. We just don't put it on our radar that we have to. Bartow County is getting ready to do more things coming that are not even in the news, that I can't even talk about. Floyd County, I know, has approached Polk County about industrial sites, manufacturing, doing similar themed things that we've seen in Walton County and Newton County with Caterpillar and these other jobs. So everybody's starting to figure out, and also too, they got a better connection to 75, but people are looking at the future about how do we collaborate beyond just one county. Everybody, the word region it's a dangerous word, but at the end of the day, if we're not talking to the people near us and around us to solve this problem, we're going to get bombarded with what you all don't want, and in some cases it's already happening. And the only way to change that, I think, is to really, talk and raise your hand and hold accountable me and Joseph and the commissioners, and hold your school board accountable too. There are things that could be happening right now that are not. And we can talk about that. You got questions, you can ask me all you want. I'll tell you my own 2 cents and the calls that I get to my office. My rule of thumb is if I'm getting calls to my office because there's a city problem, a county problem, or a school board problem, and I get a lot of those calls, and with some of those government entities, I have gotten those calls, I really have to ask, what are you doing, and are you providing the right customer service and constituent services to your citizens? I know Marjorie and I have had this conversation. At one point in time, a quarter of my casework in my office was federal casework. It has gotten better because I had a conversation with her and her team on how do we deal with veterans issues and some other things. Those things have been fixed. But in a state office, I should not be getting that much of influx of calls for concerns. It's the same with the city. This is everybody. This is how we all need to work together and communicate. When bad things happen, we need to share them. Maybe uncomfortable. People might say it's political. I don't care what you want to call it. But we got to serve the citizens first and get that done. I'm going to pivot for a quick second because it's been a while since I got to be in a room with Jim Orman, so I'm going to give Jim Orman some grief. So, Jim, while you're rolling that camera over there, catching every word we're saying on video, you can use it against me later. But I want to publicly thank you because back when I ran for the Senate and even before the Senate, you were probably one of, if not the only people in this county, and even around Georgia, that really believe constitutional carry should be passed. And he's going to be choked up because I'm going to give him grief, but he deserves this. And you pled and you stated your case, why it was important and everything else. And I'm going to tell you, that bill wasn't passed because of me. It wasn't passed because of 34 senators and, the House, many of them having the fortitude to get the bill passed through the House. And Joseph was there in the beginning. But it was because of people like Jim for the last 5 or 10 years talking about why this needed to get done, and taking the heart and taking that football and running it. And so I think everybody needs to give Jim Orman a round of applause for that bill being passed. And the reason why is because I credit Jim as the reason why I did that bill, and him holding me accountable, and him educated me, and him telling me his personal story, and me being able to go to the floor of the Senate and tell the story about why he couldn't get his license during the pandemic, when that happened, and that being one of the major components of why us and the governor fighting back as to why government offices shouldn't be closed. Your Second Amendment right is constant. It isn't when the lights go off or somebody doesn't want to show up to work because they're a government bureaucrat. It's because we have values and morals and things we believe in, and we need to fight for those things every second of the day. And because of Jim Orman, this bill is in law. So Jim, I love you and thank you. So let's pivot, talk about the future. So what are you going to do in the house this year? What's going on with the house? What do you think 2023 looks like? Any fun stuff you're going to work on? Anything you're going to bring back any chaos we're gonna create. I mean, there's a lot to be worked on.
Yeah, man, that's a loaded question. So thank you for that.
It's a great way to pivot from Second
It
Amendment.
is, and I can say for Jim too, when I was first running, no one worked harder than Jim for me. My wife, poor Jim riding around, Jessica's not the best driver, she's a good driver, but she's not the best driver, so Jim's knocking on doors, and he knocked on a ton of doors for me. And my wife would pick him up, take him to the next house, so thank you Jim for your support. You're the big reason that I'm here too, just in the office, so thank you for that. House, you know, ultimately we got to see how it makes, who wins. We're hoping to take back some seats, especially in Gwinnett. We just redistricted, just got new lines. We need to protect the seats that we have, hopefully pick up a few. So if we're in the majority, which I think we will be, there's some definitely big things that we need to do. One, we have a lot of money that came into the state that we have to figure out how to handle. From a budgetary standpoint, we have a lot of money now, which is what our budget's based on, but it's also, we have a recession potentially coming, so how do you plan for that? What's that look like? Additionally, our rainy day fund, the way the law is in the rainy day fund is there's a percentage, what's the percent, 10%, 14%? I can't remember what it is, 14% or something, that can go in the rainy day fund on your surplus. The remaining of that actually is available for a governor to kind of spend as they want to spend. That's worked out okay for us because we have Governor Kemp and he's pretty conservative doing things, spending that money. But at the end of the day, that's kind of circumventing what I believe the process is, which is the legislature appropriates the money and the executive branch executes that appropriation. So if there's $6 billion with a B that's available for a governor to spend, whether it's our governor or whether it's a Democrat governor, whatever that is, to spend without going through the appropriations process, that's a problem for me. And the problem actually came about because we never, when the bill was created or the percentage was created, we never thought we'd ever exceed that. As Georgia's grown and as the tax base has grown and as we've done so good from a business standpoint, we have a ton of money that we got to figure out how to spend. So we either need to raise that cap to put unlimited, put all the amount in the rainy day fund, which is probably a bad idea. You don't want to do that. But I think what we do need to do is to make that money not spendable. It goes through the appropriations process just like everything else.